Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Nightly video for January 14, 2020. And we are focusing once again on the financials because we had a couple of earnings that went in different directions today. Mainly Wells Fargo went one way, and JP Morgan and Citigroup went the other. But there are other earnings announcements and other companies to report on Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll take a look at those and see how the financial sector as a whole is performing. So right now in our sector performance, XLF is down on today's session. The market was relatively down except for the Dow, which was up 65 points, and the Russell was the strongest of our indexes. But in sector performance, the strongest was V Healthcare, that's bearish, and the weakest was K Technology, that's also bearish. So financials came about in the midpoint of, or the lower midpoint, of today's trading session. And that was mainly in part because of WFC, Wells Fargo. And that was a sell against 54 per share. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. This was our trading range. We have a lot of charts or symbols or lines on the chart. But mainly what we're looking at was a pickup in bear volume and the resistance and overhead supply into 55 per share. So that was a down candidate. That was a down earnings. Right before that, we had bear volume expanding. On the other hand, one of our strongest stocks of the day was Citigroup, and that continued an uptrend. I know not all financial stocks are the same, but they are in the broader group or broader category, and we often watch them as a collective sector for strengths or signs of strength or weakness for the broader market. But this week, as earnings begin or really continue through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're again focusing on these particular stocks in the sector. So Citigroup had earnings that continued the uptrend. Unlike Wells Fargo, green or bull volume was expanding, and that expanded even yesterday. So the surprise or the gap to the upside took us through 82 per share. And this uptrend continues for shares of Citigroup. But there were other stocks in play that weren't necessarily as strong at the close today, but we'll be watching those. For example, Bank of America, not dissimilar from Citigroup, which has additional bull volume and an additional uptrend. Today had that loop around, and the earnings, as you can see, are the 15th of January. That's tomorrow. So Bank of America has those earnings there. And then we can look at Capital One Financial, which has earnings a little bit further out, but still has the uptrend, still has that reversal pattern. Let's take a look at the broader XLF before we start talking individual names. It is into 31 per share. Volume in aggregate is going down. Not really a clear picture from that perspective. Like the markets, the financial sector is generally overbought, overextended, and a little bit divergent with volume. It didn't really pull back as would logic suggest, and instead broke through and has been hanging out above or into this upper trend line. That is, once again, 31 per share for the XLF. If you're positioning, probably your best bet is to take a bear put spread or a bear type of play, given the divergences, given, well, I guess we're going to see what happens in the rest of the week, but the mismatch or the alternate outcomes, opposite outcomes, between Wells Fargo and Citigroup. The other stock was JP Morgan, and now we're going to have other stocks report, but JP Morgan, we'll take a look at it, was another stock that had earnings in today's session that looked more like Citigroup. So again, higher highs, higher lows, rising above the weekly or the daily chart trend lines, and pivoting or supporting off of the 20-day exponential moving average. In an uptrend, we typically look to buy pullbacks or retracements with in-out spreads or bull verticals to these rising moving averages or rising trend lines. And that occurred just recently in JP Morgan. Now, let's take a look at a scan criterion. I set this up before, but we're scanning in earnings to come. We're looking at those with weekly, so basically the S&P 500 or beyond, and we can sort by market cap. We can also sort by, as I've done here, can't really see it, but it's the days until earnings column in Think or Swim. So days till earnings, if it's 0, kind of hard to see in the video, I know, but if it's 0, it reported today. If it's 1 or 1.5, it reports tomorrow. And that's Wednesday as of this video. 2 and beyond is Thursday. So we can see the groupings of financial names. Today, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, JP Morgan, and those were reporting in today's session. So we had those behind us as we do the video tonight. And if you're positioned or using the logic for the earnings type of butterflies or earnings expected moves, we'll see how those play out in the morning session and throughout the day. Remember, stocks that go into weekly or into earnings-based expected moves can hit those and then turn away from them. And that could be an intraday trading opportunity to short into the upper target or go long or buy into the support or lower target. And of course, options can be done with that as well. But in tomorrow's session, per this, we're looking at Bank of America, U.S. Bancorp, not quite a health, it's a healthcare, not quite a financial, but Goldman Sachs and PNC. On top of that, we're looking at BlackRock Financial, not Kinder Morgan, not Alcoa. So those are the financials reporting in tomorrow's session. U.S. Bancorp, Goldman Sachs, PNC, and BlackRock. We can take a moment to look at those on the weekly expected moves. We can also look at the earnings expected move calculator, but just kind of quickly going through just a few of them there. Goldman Sachs had a similar play to the other stocks today. So it continues the uptrend. It has the breakout, has rising trend lines, rising moving averages, and in this case, strengthening bull volume. That means the green bars are volume coming in the days where the market was higher or closed higher, and we look at that as a sign of confirmation. So Goldman Sachs does have higher highs, higher lows, and its pivot level to watch is 250. It's a little bit too late to get long because we can't manage risk with the market that is overextended. So in that scenario, I would suggest waiting, especially if you aren't positioned, waiting for earnings to take place and seeing how the market shakes out and then trading from there. We prefer to pick up stocks or put on positions on pullbacks or retracements to these moving averages. Other stocks could be BlackRock. We can take a look at it. So BlackRock is going to be the next candidate. Not that dissimilar. So with a few exceptions, the financial sector and financial grouping, they are bullish. Again, that one strange exception today, Wells Fargo. And that just had come off those highs into resistance and was already selling off ahead of today's earnings. And that bear volume picked up, bull volume declined. And that again was a pattern, you can see it closely, before the earnings announcement. So that's a busted stock. Other ones would include PNC to look at. A lot of companies report tomorrow, not dissimilar. U.S. Bancorp, we'll take a look at it for USB. And that's when that got busted too. But this is the pattern that you want to see if you are a fade or counter trend or going against a trend type of trade, is bull volume declining, as in going down with price going up. And then as price goes down or does a loop or arc pattern, you want to see this, which is red volume increase. And that's where those in-out spreads come handy, especially in the 60 and 61 level. And that led to a sell-off in USB. So not all is well in the financials, but mainly or mostly, we do see bullish trends, bullish patterns, bullish volume. But we have Wednesday for a lot of headlines, a lot of earnings, and we'll watch those very closely, TheoTrade. If you have positions on, certainly watch your levels, watch your spots, have your risk managed by those spreads or butterflies. And if you're an intraday trader, we'll have a lot to look at tomorrow, including earnings-based indicators or earnings-based expected moves. Take care, have a good evening, and let's watch the financial sector Wednesday and Thursday. This is Corey Rosenblum with your Theo Nightly video for January 14th, 2020.